The protagonist of this film is the ancestor of the E-Class, produced over half a century ago. This Mercedes W115, commonly known as Stroke 8 from year 1972, is equipped with a 2-liter 55 horsepower diesel engine, and it was bought in an online auction with the equivalent of €700 in 2012. According to the seller, the car required minor sheet repairs, but it was mechanically fully functional, it was insured, and it had passed all technical tests. The 40-year-old car had to travel 600 kilometers on its own to her new home. The engine started without any problems and the car set off on a long journey. On the way, one brake caliper got stuck, but the fault was quickly restored with a hammer. 1 week later, the car got a complete body renovation where it was disassembled, welded and painted anew. After 3 weeks of intensive work, the car was ready for the streets. A month after that, the owner drove the car to his own wedding. There, the car spent the whole harsh winter without any cover. 8 months later, while walking around, I saw this car with a for sale note. From the outside, the car looked really good and only the 20-inch wide rims did not match the baroque bodyline of the vehicle. At that time, I was in fact looking for an interesting classic, so I decided to ask for the car, but if you want to know the price the owner wanted, first you have to watch the movie to the end. A young man opened the door and he was very glad that I was interested in his classic. We made an appointment for the next day for a test drive. The Mercedes had spent a long winter outdoors and needed to be washed, so we decided to go to the car wash first. The battery spent the whole winter in the car and was discharged, so we had to recharge it, but after reinserting it and turning on the choke, the engine started without any problems. The characteristic clatter of a Mercedes diesel placed my ear with a nice, quiet word. After a short engine warm-up, we went on the first ride. I sat down as a passenger. And so the first problem started right after we left the driveway. We had to hit the jammed brakes with a hammer. Old bearings squealed terribly, the propeller shaft screamed, and huge rims rubbed against the wheel arches on every bump on the road. At the car wash, where we cleaned the car thoroughly, there were more unpleasant surprises. A piece of paint had chipped off the roof. It turned out that the car had had a sunroof, but it was out of order, so someone came up with the idea of hiding it under a layer of putty. The bodywork was sloppy, the primer was punctured in some places, and unevenly sanded putty was visible. It turned out that the repair was carried out by amateurs at the lowest possible cost, by a colleague of the owner who was learning the profession. The old varnish had been sanded with sandpaper, gaps were filled with putty, then came a thin layer of primer and the cheapest varnish. The entire renovation cost €800 and took 10 days. It's definitely too cheap and too short for the renovation to be carried out half decently, not to mention properly. The interior looked better than the paint work. The inside of the car was neat and clean, a little damp, light brown in color. The ventilation knobs, the instrument panel illumination, and both fuel and oil pressure gauges did not work. The steering wheel was cracked, the bellows was missing from the gear stick, and some water was getting in through the abrasive glass seals. When I got behind the wheel, I realized the car was in tragic technical condition. The suspension was just a ruin. The wheels had no convergence. When I was trying to turn, the power steering pump squealed, and the enormous play on the steering wheel made it impossible to drive straight with the 20-inch rims. The brakes were almost completely worn out. The 4-speed manual gearbox required a major overhaul. The clutch was gone for and slipping, and every attempt of shifting gears was like mixing thick mud with a stick. On our way home after the ride, the engine suddenly stalled and did not start anymore. Mercedes returned home on a tow truck. The next day, the owner tried to start the engine, but to no avail. When I saw the car for the first time, it looked really good, and the price of 4,000 euros seemed right. After a few hours, it turned out that the car requires a complete rebuild and replacement of many parts. Moreover, the previous tinsmith repair was simply a waste of money. After a long talk with the owner and attempts to convince him that the car is in ruins, he still kept on his own and did not want to lower the price at all. He called me several times with a special offer, but it was ridiculous for him to cut just a little bit of the price, from 4,000 to 3,900. Later, I just stopped answering the phone and we lost contact. The Mercedes was standing on the street, decaying for a long time. I saw an advertisement with a much higher price on the internet several times. A year later, the car was standing in the same place, no air in the tires and torn haberdashery without mirrors and no badge on the hood. Unfortunately, in the wrong hands, such cars simply deteriorate. After 2 years, the car disappeared from the street and its fate is unknown to me.
Dobra, okej, próbujemy go palić. Raz, dwa, trzy. No, niech jeszcze raz mu ten świecę załadujemy. No, bo się zapowietrzył. Dobra, raz, dwa, trzy. Dobra. Czekaj.
Masz plaka?
Plak?
Plaka, no.
W stanie?
Nie plak, to jest taki do plastiku, do czyszczenia plastików, plak. Jego się daje do filtra powietrza.
Aha, to nie mam czegoś. A, wiem, szybkostart.
No.
Nie mam.
Ma pan plaka?